Good morning. It is Monday and it is time for your next Bedhead blog. So, in church, we've been kind of diving into 2 Timothy and discussing the subject of legacy. And it really got me thinking just about my own personal journey and thinking about the legacy I want to leave. But I think sometimes when we do that, we forget about the legacy we were handed. Or we think the legacy I'm handed is just what I'm stuck with. And that is not the case at all. So I shared a couple of weeks ago on a little radio segment I do about the very difficult relationship I had with my mother growing up, and that she was there for some of my early formative years, but around the 5th grade, my parents divorced and my dad got custody of all of us kiddos, which was unheard of at the time, right? It kind of tells you just like a little bit about my mom without saying anything about her, because that was in 1980 and that just never happened. And so because she was there for some of those early formative years, I really began to see some patterns in me that are like her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that even happen? Like I didn't spend a ton of time with her, from 5th grade on. But again, I think in those early years, so much of those traits of your personality and the way that you learn to communicate, all of that gets formed pretty early in life. And so every once in a while I would see just a little piece of her pop up in me and I like freak out, like, oh my God, why am I acting like this? Like, I don't want to be like her at all. And so it really got me thinking, like, well, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? Because I don't want to leave that. And there have been many things about her that I have broken. Like, she was an alcoholic. I broke that. I do have an occasional drink, but I don't drink all the time. And if I do, I'm a 2-drink maximum girl. Like, I don't get all crazy. So I did break that, chain right there, which is a big one. And I had to have a very early conversation with my children. Like, hey, I know you're in high school. I know you're going off to college. You are going to be faced with these social things. And I can't stop you from doing those things, but just know, like, the first drink you take could be it for you. It could be. So just based on your family history, you need to really take that into consideration. So there have been things about the legacy that are much, much better, but there are times where I see tiny little pieces of her bubble to the surface. And I'm really trying to be, or I've really tried over the years to be more and more and more aware of that, because that is not a legacy I want to hand off to my kids at all. And there have been times in my life where I've had to go to my kids and say, hey, I responded poorly. I wasn't as patient as I should have been. I raised my voice maybe every once in a while, and I shouldn't have done that. And I'm sorry. And can you please forgive me? And I'm going to try to be better at this. So there have been times over the years where I've literally had to eat crow, suck up my pride, and be like, I screwed up. And I am so, so sorry. And it really has been a good gift for my kids too, in teaching them about apologies and about extending grace and forgiveness and that type of thing. Even my daughter, we recently sat in a car and had a really in-depth conversation about some of the things that just aren't going right in our relationship. And I think as time goes by, you really begin to realize the things that you thought you were upset with are really something different, altogether different, that you weren't even thinking about a decade ago. Like, I know a lot of some of the pressure that I felt and the stress that I felt when I was married to my ex-husband. I had 2 small children. I had a dad who had a massive stroke and was wheelchair bound for 20 years and required a tremendous amount of care. I had a full-time job outside of the home that could not be dialed back. So there was just decades where there was so much on my plate. I wasn't as patient as I needed to be. I wasn't as calm as I needed to be. I was under like this boiling pressure all the time. I didn't sleep good. I wasn't fueling my body well. There was no time for Jenny to even think about, what do you want to go out and do? Do you want to go join a gym? There was no time for any of that nonsense. So there was just no time to consider myself and take care of myself. And that really just, so much flowed from that. That was not good or positive. And so, I sat with my daughter and just said, some of that I felt back then wasn't even, it wasn't about you kids. You were doing teenage stuff, and sure, that aggravated me sometimes, but it really was about these other things that were much, much bigger that I had going on. I was upset with my father, and my mom had to move in with us at one point, which was awful. It was so bad for our whole family. And after a year, I literally had to say, you got to go. Like, you're creating a situation in my family that's not healthy. And so that was very, very hard. So we just had this really raw, honest conversation about like what was driving some of my behavior way back then. And it wasn't what I thought it was. So sometimes it takes years of going through some of that stuff and really hunkering down in your mind and in your heart and questioning, what was that all about? And so it was a good, productive conversation, and it was good growth. So what I want to convey to you, if you were handed off a terrible legacy, you don't have to stay there. You don't. You do have to be self-reflective. You do have to humble yourself and set your pride aside and apologize and say, I want to choose differently for you kiddos. I want the legacy that I leave and that I pass off to be different. And so you get that choice. You're not stuck in whatever family nonsense that got handed to you. You're just not. I will say, however, it's okay to mourn those things and sit in it for a minute and get some professional counseling to like work through it. That's fine. But at some point, you're responsible for you, and you're responsible for what you hand off. And so you have to put in the work and heal and do all the things so that you can hand off something better than what you were handed. All right, guys, I pray this encourages you. I pray you make today fantastic and great, and we'll chat soon.